Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's my honor to introduce Anthony Watts and his design of a timber frame.
Thank you. Okay, so I know a number of you here. Let's see, I started woodworking in 2001. So you can probably think about what your first shop was. But my first shop, I was living in Maryland in a 3-story townhouse, an end unit. And the basement floor was unfinished except for where the washer and dryer was. And the washer and dryer, well, it got abused a bit because I would put a blanket over it, set up my table saw, a portable table saw, and go to work in the same area where my wife was trying to do laundry. So
To wonder you're still alive.
that's right. So that was my first shop, and I built projects for her, so I would make sure to do that. But I built a pie safe for her, one of those that the 10-punch pie safes and everything. It's 5 foot by about 4 foot or so, decent size, all in a small townhouse area. The second shop that I had moved to Tullahoma to work at the base in 2003, and I had a 2-car garage that never had a car in it. Always had woodworking equipment. And I think I found this club 2004 or so, and I've been in and out of the club. I'm going to be more regular. There was a while where some of you know I was quite active, and then I went away to do some other things, and I'm back and really enjoying being back. So 2018, my wife and I moved to Beach Grove, and the house that you see on the right hand side there, that's my house before I had a shop next to it. And so December of 18, we moved in and got to thinking about, I want a shop, because we actually wanted to use our garage for what it's supposed to be used for, I guess, the house cars. And so got to looking around, and my idea all along, especially after helping a friend do a raising of a timber frame, Greg Pennington up in Hendersonville, I helped him raise his timber frame. And I just thought it was just beautiful, the fact that you have no mechanical features to put it together, and it's just those massive timbers. And we did everything with levers and such at the time. And so that was a lot of fun, but I knew that I didn't have the skill nor the time to want to do all of that by myself. So I looked around and I found Homestead timber frames. So Tim and I are about 1 hour and 40 minutes away. So bear with us as we go through this, because we're going to tag team a bit. And you may have seen us before, and we're you just saw my slides, 30 minutes ago. So what I wanted to start with was the idea that after I found Homestead timber frames, we needed to go about a design stage. I kind of knew the equipment that I wanted to put in there. I did buy a lot of new equipment afterwards, but I knew the pieces that I needed to do the type of projects that I wanted to do. So I worked with the then owner, Cindy, doing the design. And let me go to the next one here. So we started with the layout, and it may be a little bit hard to see a number of these things that have changed since then. But I wanted to have a kind of an office space or something that wasn't, and you'll see that, I guess, on the far right hand side. I wanted to have a space over here that really was going to maybe be used for temporary woodworking, but I bicycle, and you'll find that in the last couple of slides that this is now my bike shop over here. But I also wanted a full bathroom. So there's bathroom area, shower. This area's got stairs and there's a loft above my office and bathroom here. So that's all similar, but the layout of the shop part itself has changed a lot. I wanted to look a bit larger shop than this initially until I got to thinking economically and working with them, realizing that if you know anything about timber framing, you're going to frame the shop twice. You're going to frame it with timber frames, and then I've got 2x6 walls around there, and I had another company that you'll see to help me with that part of the framing part before I went in and did all the interior finish work. So getting down to being somewhat cost effective, I went with 24 by 42. So that's what we're working with here, and they took my big eyes and ideas and got down to the reality here. My woodworking area, the main area here, would be right in the center, and I ended up flipping this table saw 90 degrees because, as you can see, if you bring sheet goods in through here, best way to do it would be to have a table saw 90 degrees to that. I've got a planer next to it on one side, and my router table on the opposite side. I did flip the lathe. The lathe is actually going to be over here, and there's a jointer back here now. And so you'll see in some of the other pictures that a number of other things have changed as well. But that was the starting point. And then they did a rendering of what it might look like when it was finished. I do live in a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA, but it's got a covenant where we have to match the style of a secondary building to the house. So I had this lot over here to work with. I've got, I guess, somewhere over here is the end. My shop goes about 12 foot from the end of my property, and then goes over here to towards the driveway. I ended up not going with the sunlights again, just being more economically feasible. So next up would be they went back and did their homework and started to put together what the timber frame was looking like. And I'll let Tim maybe talk about some of the particular designs that you could use. And what's this design right here called, Tim, with the X?
Yeah, it would be a scissor truss. That's right. Yeah.
So that's what we ended up using, something similar to that. You'll see, and breakout of pieces. I had quite a few drawings that they provided before we got started. And again, this was April 2020, so you can think about the time frame there of being in the middle of COVID. That's when we broke ground. These guys showed up to actually do the raising. I wanted to wait until it got nice and hot for them before.
Consider it as
Yeah.
Because it's still the summer.
Did a really wonderful job of that, Andy.
And so there's the starting point. Had a company come in, and so I've got a crawl space here, and well, I knew that I wanted a crawl space instead of a slab, simply because I did want to have heating and air conditioning, and wanted to hide all the ducting. So that's why I went with the crawl space. So we dug it out, and that's their starting point. Next number of slides will show the timber frame raising. Should we start with the time-lapse video, or do you want to start with some pictures and kind of describe what you're doing?
Yeah, let's start with some photographs, and then we'll save the time lapse there.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Tim for a little bit to describe what all was going on
Sure.
here.
Sure.
You were the foreman at the time, essentially,
Foreman.
and now you're general manager.
That's correct. Yes. So I'm really happy I'm very thankful that Anthony gave me the opportunity to come and talk about timber framing. It is what I do for a living, and it is something that I'm fairly passionate about. So, and I'm also happy to be in a room full of folks who will understand some of the words that I say.
Like you got pictures, so that helps.
Yeah, pictures of them.
That's right. Yeah, that also helps too. Yeah. So I'll take a little, just a brief brief history of Homestead Timber Frames. Up in Crossville, Tennessee, started by Bruce and Sidney Gardner. In 2008, was born out of another company that they had out in Knoxville called the Beamery. Moved over to Crossville, kind of a smaller operation. We kind of wanted to stay relatively small because, well, there's not a lot of people that know about timber framing. And one of the challenges that I'm sure that you guys can probably face, explaining to your friends and your family exactly what you do and the kind of work that you do and things like that. My biggest challenge is explaining to folks what the difference between a log cabin and a timber frame is. So when I came to Homestead Timber Frames, it just kind of the opportunity presented itself. I had been going to school at the Appalachian Center for Craft in Smithville, Tennessee. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with that place. And graduated from there and found the Gardners. They asked me, they said, "Tim, you know anything about timber framing?" I said, "Well, not a whole lot." I said, "But from what I understand, it's like big furniture that you live inside." And he said, "That's exactly what it is. And that's what we build. We handcraft homes, like a furniture grade home. You can imagine what that would be like. So when we have folks like Anthony, wonderful clients that come our way, we always want to do a really good job. We employ a shop full of artisans, and a lot of them came from the same place that I did. And we're very fortunate right now in the interest in timber frame that's going on. So what we're looking at right here is that, after all the planning, after all of the planning, and, we have to order material, we have to decide on material. And I think we decided to go with white oak.
What were the choices again? There was something from out west that you could choose, and the white oak, of course, is the primary one around here.
Sure, yes, of course, everybody knows that there's a lot of white oak around here in most places. Another material that's really great for timber framing is Douglas fir. Douglas fir grows out west, not a whole lot of Douglas fir around here. But the good thing about Douglas fir is that you can get it in just about any size you can think of. That's a pretty good sized tree that they grow out there. We don't grow them that big around here in Tennessee. But they don't have a lot of big white oaks up there either. So. But yes, there's Douglas fir. When folks started building timber frames back in the 1600s up in Pennsylvania area and up in the Northeast, they didn't have the luxury of picking all one species. You had an axe and you got pretty terrible conditions. You're going to use whatever's around. So you'll find a lot of timber frames up in the Pennsylvania area that's got poplar, oak, hickory, maple, just everything. So you can timber frame anything, just about any kind of timber. Obviously, there's timbers that, obviously there's species of wood that are better to use. And so Mr. Watts decided to go with white oak. Seemed like a good choice. Being here in Tennessee, might as well build us a white oak timber frame.
And that limits our length between the main.
It does, yeah. It does, yeah. It can limit. You're kind of limited by the size of the timber that's available to you around here. So, like I said, you can get just about any size Douglas fir. You can get 60-foot long Douglas fir timber if you want to. It's hard to find a 60-foot long white oak timber that's straight enough and that has that is clear of defects, and straight grain. All those have already been cut down and used. All the big ones, we'll grow them back. So, but yeah, so the size of the timber does kind of constrain. That helps us determine the style of truss or the style of bent that you would want to use in your timber frame. And so these cross sections that you see here, these are what we call bends. These are bends. So it's exactly what it's a cross section of a timber frame home right there. So the way that it works is that we assemble these bents. We build them in the shop, of course, very carefully. We assemble them in the shop, trial fit them so that we don't have to do that twice. out when it's good blustery 100 degrees or so, you know. And so we like to make sure that when we get to your job site, that we work efficiently, and that we know that there aren't as many surprises. So what you're seeing here, you see our crane lifting these bits. These bits probably weigh, if you'd asked me yesterday, I could have probably told you exactly about, I mean, I've slept since then. So I would say that this bent, it probably weighs about 2,200 pounds all together. So each one of these, depending on, you know, the size, it being white oak, you know, is very dense. So each one of those, that's a pretty typical weight for one of these. So
The posts are, I think, 8 by 9. and 8 by
That's-
10.
that's correct. Yeah, they are. And so down below, you have, we've got substantial block, you know, in order to support that weight that's going to be on top.
Is that green lumber or is it kiln dry?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So you can get kiln dried timbers. You can air dry timbers. A lot of folks who timber frame, they'll come to us and they'll say, I've got a stand of white oak and I'd love to cut it down. I'd love to build a timber frame out of it. He said, but I'd like to air dry, you know, cut it all down. I said, well, start now. About 45 years from now, you'll have a good set of logs there to use. So the good thing about timber framing is, in traditional timber frame, is that we use green timber just like they did then. And so what that allows for is for when you cut the joints, when, you know, mortise and tenon joints, and we use wooden pegs to peg it all together. When that starts to dry out, what does wood do? It shrinks down, don't it? So it shrinks around those joints, shrinks around those pegs. Boy, it's really nice and tight around all those joints. And so we use green timber. Of course, you know, using green timber, and Anthony may be able to attest to that, but you guys know what happens when a piece of wood dries out, you know, it's going to jag sometimes, especially when you cut a square piece out of a round piece. And so that's something that you just kind of have to look forward to. Explaining to clients, why does this timber got a crack in it? The nature of the material that you're using, that's what's going to happen. So sometimes we get lucky, sometimes it doesn't jag. It's hard to predict. But yeah. So, let's see if I toggle through here. Make sure. Okay. So, my crew and I, whenever we come out to a job site and we're getting ready to do a job, you know, there's a pretty significant amount of planning involved. You know, there's logistics. We got to get this stuff over to the job site. That's easy enough. Well, we've got to be able to stand it up. We've got cranes now. That's good. We don't need mules. There are some communities around, I think in Spencer, Tennessee, and we assisted those guys with their library. I think they're Amish or Mennonite community down there. I don't want to speak it wrong, but they built themselves a library, and we kind of give them a little technical assistance, because in their community, some of the techniques that have been passed down kind of got watered down. So we like to stay kind of true to historical timber framing and methods like that.
So I put down some pretty large gravel there and spread it out in order to make sure that when they pump the crane and all the heavy equipment on, that we wouldn't be sinking down.
That's right. That's very important too. It also helps keep the timber frame clean too. There's not a big muddy mess around. So you see in these last slides here, we've got our 3 bents stood up. We've got them rigged off. We did have them rigged off. You can see right here, we used a significant amount of rigging, come-alongs, cables, crane slings, and straps, and things like that to make sure that things don't move when we don't want them to move. So we make sure that when we stand that first one up, it's a very critical moment, because it weighing as much as it does, you don't want it to go anywhere that you unexpected. So we make sure that we anchor that back down to the ground. I know in this photograph that those tie down points have been already removed, but usually we'll tie it down to this point here and this point over here with the method that we use to attach the post to. Get them all stood up, get them squared up, and then we'll come in and we drop in our girts, our connecting girts right here. So it's just, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, pretty intuitive way to build a home. Get your pieces stood up, drop these in, get your braces in, get all that nice and tight. Then you come over here, start dropping in your purlins. So see those purlins are cut to span between those two vents right there. And this is a method that a lot of timber frame companies use, and we call that a ladder rig. So it's just a bunch of straps that are kind of chained together. We don't want the crane driver's arm to wear out, moving them one at a time. And also, Anthony doesn't want to pay us by the hour. So we're going to pick them all up and bring them all over at the same time. So that's a pretty efficient way to do that. And, they just drop right in. Just another image there. You can kind of see some of those are ladder straps there. We've got guys climbing around, got the scissor lifts, got forklifts in the background. And it's, you can see it starting to kind of take shape there. Talking about the design of the timber frame, you see this middle vent right here is a scissor truss. One of you gentlemen back here said scissor truss. That's pretty common, pretty sought after design right there. What that does is it allows for pretty good head space. You know, you don't have to have a lot of pieces down here low holding things together. You can achieve pretty wide open space down here below. You'll see a lot of churches in Europe, in the main areas in the churches. They want a big grand open space. That's kind of the design that they'll use. So it's pretty much like what you see here at Scissor Truss. Is I think we might have done this one a little differently. I think these are 4 separate pieces that are all joined together inside the king post right there is what that's called. Nowadays, we use a Douglas fir. We lap these 2 pieces together, and then we'll construct what's called a clasping king post. It's very strong, so that the king post completely encapsulates this middle joint right here. So it goes all the way around, and super strong, very, very strong. See one of my braver fellas climbing the ladder up there, going up to the top to probably loosen up some rigging right there, and just a really fun job, really nice and beautiful weather. I mean, it was hot, yeah, of course. Got over here, this really nice Thomas Kincaid looking picture here. This is really nice. Where it's the timber frame has been finished and Anthony's gone to work on framing that in. Beginning to do that. So that's where we are. I don't know.
How long did that took 4 days to be over on site?
I think we were on site for 4 days. Yeah, didn't take very long at all. Moving those heavy pieces around is a little time consuming and getting everything like you want.
And whether it was outside or inside, just watching the efficiency of it all, whether it be using the crane or anything else, you just tell that they had really thought about this. I guess maybe you video some of these, probably go back and look and say, how can I make improvements next time?
We can. We're like Bear Bryant. We watch the tapes after all the timber frame races. We like to go back and review. If something goes wrong, or if something goes like we don't want it to go, then we can know what to do on the next time. Because time's money.
So just before you go on the sunset picture, the far right vent, that is a vent or is it a snipper? Yeah, that's
So you can go back, we stopped the timber frame.
that's what I
That
thought, those
there.
3 vents. right?
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
okay,
And then my office space and everything is traditional frame.
got it. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
How do you secure your post to the deck?
So we use a really cool product called the Timber Links. And if we have time, I'll pull it up here on their website. It's what it is that let me scroll back through here and see. We didn't have them installed yet. So essentially what we have is that we go through and we map out where all the posts are going to land. We're very careful about doing that. Pulling diagonals, making sure, triple check. So it's very important. So And then we'll bore a hole down into the deck, or whether it's concrete or wood deck or whatever. And then inside that hole goes an anchor of some kind. And so if it's concrete anchor. If it's wood, it'll be like a lag bolt, very large lag bolt. And so essentially, Anthony had gone through, added some blocking in there, some solid blocking that we can bore into. We drilled that down into there. Then that leaves us about a 2-inch stud above the deck. And on top of that stud goes the timber link. And the timber link is a stainless steel connector. It's about this long. I'm sorry I didn't bring one. I'll bring one next time. It's about this long, and it's got a hole that goes through it like this. So we bore the hole in the post. We'll bore a hole at the correct height to the side of the post. So it drops down over that connector. Put the pin in there, spread it out, number 8 Allen wrench. There you go. Very strong. I think it provides something like 26,000 pounds of uplift resistance each one. So,
Do you have to have a concrete footer under each one of those posts?
so that's a good question too. So we need to transfer the weight, because it's a pretty heavy thing. It's a lot heavier than a conventional building. So yeah, we want to make sure that there's a sufficient amount of footer below it. Yeah. So Anthony, he created a crawl space there, and I think he used 12-inch CMU. If that's correct. I think that's right. And to make sure that we were able to transfer that weight down to the ground.
And then the joists are on 12-inch centers in between the joists. Anytime you got the posts, you got a bunch of 2x12s that are just stacked together to essentially make the extra part that you can drill through.
That's right. Give us some meat so that we can bite into that.
But you didn't have to actually pour like a 24x24 post footer underneath the floor.
We don't have to do anything that big around here, unless it's a larger structure. Now sometimes bigger barns, then we start getting into 30, 40, 50 feet spans, and the weight, of course, goes up on that. And you need to, that's when we contact our engineer friends. I'm not an engineer. That's something I have to say about 12 pounds a day.
Thing is, you probably got a lot of engineers sitting around this table.
Well, well, you just made me here. Well, on that note, I'll turn it back over. But anyway, so we want to make sure we always double check with engineers to make sure that we've got sufficient amount of ground below, trying to get that way down the ground.
Let's look at the video before.
Yeah.
we go on, 'cause
Yeah,
that's-
absolutely.
That's all you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead. We did have the forethought enough to create a time-lapse video of the raising of this thing, and you can kind of see how it goes. See the efficiency of it.
We're gonna wait out, make sure at first. Some people like that.
Everybody pretty familiar with timber frame? Know how it goes? Never seen one? Never done? I'd recommend it.
Cool looking.
They figured it out about 1,000 years ago over in Europe, so why change good? I think we got some pilots in here, right? We had at least one pilot. Yeah. We're working on a timber frame airplane hangar up in Idaho. That's going to be going up sometime soon.
Whereabouts in Idaho?
Close to Boise, just right outside Boise.
That's where I live.
Is that right?
These guys have been drinking.
You can see by yeah, you can see by the speed. Yeah, that's see how efficient that we actually are.
Well, why'd you charge it for 4 days?
Well, it takes. I mean, not everybody can do it that fast. So.
Wow. You didn't even break a sweat.
Wow. That's why I'm the foreman. Everybody else. So you can see there's your first bend goes up. Come over here, make sure that's good and tied off. Bring it up to the second one. Get him tied off too. Bring in our girts. Now we've got a 4-legged structure. Now we know that that's pretty good and stable. Now we drop this one down. We got something to tie it to. Bring in his girts, drop that in.
Pretty cool.
You make all these.
We'll go over here and have a coffee break. Have a
Oh, yeah, you gotta-
joke, tell a joke. You can see the crane swinging really, really fast. Get that out of the way. All right, I guess, well, he did pay us for 4 days. We might as well finish this up here. No, so here we go, drop the pearl in there. Gotta get a ridge beam in. Gotta make sure the braces go.
How big are those purlins?
I think those are, I think they're 6x8.
6x8?
But maybe 8x8. I can't really. Well, they're definitely bigger than 6x8s. I think
There we go.
Cool. There you go. That's how easy it is.
Are all those joints pegged?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Every joint, everywhere it's connected. Yep. So mortise and tenon with a wooden peg in.
You do any draw boring, or you probably don't need to create lumber?
Well, we used to do some draw boring. Draw boring is, you guys know about draw boring. Draw boring is kind of hard to teach to some people who don't really understand the concept. So if one of you new guys comes in, and he puts your draw bore in the wrong direction, you're gonna get in a situation. So what we do is that when we assemble it in the shop, we make sure everything is really nice and square, and we try to draw it up with rigging, trucker straps, come alongs, make sure everything is really nice and tight, like it would be if you did draw. And so when we get it in that condition, everything's nice and square, our post feet are where they're supposed to be, then we'll go through, then we'll drill our tenons. Go through there, the holes will be there in the piece already. We'll go through, drill the tenons, put the test peg in it. When we go to put it back together, it'll go right back the way it is.
When it dries, it's gonna shrink and tighten up even more.
That's right. That's right.
How green a lumber, I mean, from following the tree to this setting up, are we talking weeks, months, years?
Sometimes it's as little as a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Just depending on what mill has what.
Right.
You know, if we need something special, if we need a special size, great big piece, 8x12 or 10x12 or something like that, that you pretty much count that piece is probably going to be a little greener because they had to go out and find it. So yeah, sometimes I know that we've got timber in before. Some of our clients cut their own timber and have it milled up, and then directly from that mill comes to us. So a couple of weeks.
How much of the timber will be exposed through the drywall, like as a decorative piece?
Yeah, so
I'm gonna get you the final picture, so you'll see the timber on the inside. Everything interior wise, all of it's exposed.
everything, all the timbers are, Anthony did it the right way, and he created an envelope, the building envelope around the timber frame. So it's nice and tight, so it's just got a really, really strong skeleton under it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you get a frame twice now, so they've done all the big framing. This is what's going to hold up building. Really, the 2x6s are just going around in order to put a shell on the building.
In order to insulate it. keep
And
it
of
warm,
course-
keep it cool.
So as I mentioned on this side over here, this is the traditional framing that I did after the last bent here. That was for the office space and the rest of the bathroom there. And my daughter, she had to find something productive to do. So we set up the hand. So here on the left-hand side, now Homestead Timber Frame did, even though they didn't install this part, they did provide all of the spruce, and that came from Washington State.
I think, yes, come from around the Spokane area, yeah. A lot of the spruce that we use now is European spruce. Comes from, European spruce is just a kind of an all-encompassing name. Some of it comes from Nordic countries, some of it from Eastern, a lot of it from Eastern Europe. It's a really, really nice product.
So now you can see the purlins here, they're all exposed, spruce on top. Above the spruce, you'd have the insulation. I did not have a air space on my, there's no attic there. So it's 2 levels of I guess it was R30 and then sheathing. And then because the person that came in and did the inspection didn't like the way I did the roof, I ended up having to put another layer of insulation and another layer of sheeting on top of it because they called it a living space instead of a shop space. And I couldn't get over that, so I spent a couple more $1,000 and put a second roof on there essentially.
But the good news is you can heat it with a hairdryer.
Yeah, that's a lid. All right. So, and then the 2x6 walls, I put the insulation in all the walls myself. So let's see. So now we've got, I did hire somebody to do all the 2x6 framing around here and put the sheeting on. And then it was mine to take care of from there with insulation and all of the interior work I essentially did by myself. So as I said, started this in April of 2020. I just recently built my first piece of furniture in here because I've been working on the shop rather than in the shop for years. But you know, I had a good time for the most part, except for the backaches and such. So there's that. Then I start bringing in some of my equipment. Just because I needed to use some of it, and it was sitting in the garage, and I thought, well, I'd rather just be able to move it around a bit. That I'm about to put flooring down, so I did have to move all this around. And there you can see the flooring over here. And I chose the design of having just pine shiplap here and painted this down here, and then did engineered flooring on there also. So the guys that came in and did the traditional framing, they built my loft space here. So that's the loft here. It's over above the office space / bathroom. And then you'll see some railing. And since there was a bunch of very light colored wood, the oak and the spruce, I wanted to change it up. So when we get to the railing, I chose cedar railing. I think I gotta lay the floor first. Now I'm laying the floor. This is the king. What's the
King post, yes.
Yeah. So from the king post, I had an electrician come in and hide all of the wiring essentially, and have a large fan here, and I'll have HVAC eventually. I do now, but it took a while before I got the HVAC in. So I put the large fan in here and give the lighting. It's all LED lighting. I laid off the floor. I have to take a rest every once in a while. And set up for the return duct. I did all the cutting out for the return duct. My next door neighbor is an HVAC, owns the HVAC company, so he came in and installed the HVAC. I thought my dad and I would do it because that's what he used to do as a living, but neither he nor I want to do any more crawling around underneath, and I'd already been doing it. So I had somebody else do that. And it's starting to take shape here. There's the kind of the finished loft space. It's now got some, you'll see on the outside is where my wood storage is, but right now I also have some wood storage up here in the loft space. I built my doors just to grab some scrap wood and built 2 doors here and into this storage space over here. And I'm not a painter. I really messed up. Yeah. I had it almost totally finished, and then had my gallon of paint up here, knocked it off, and as obviously it hit the ground and went up to the ceiling. It went on my screen. I still have it on my screen, even 2 years later. I can't get it off. I just need to buy a new screen. I had to repaint this whole thing. Fun stuff.
Thanks for sharing that picture, because that's why I joined this club.
There's some of the outside work, and I had a brick person. I didn't do the brick myself, nor did I put the siding on. I did do some of the painting on the siding. So I had to match the house. And here's almost the finish. I didn't want to do brick all the way up. So I blended towards what the house looks like. I extend the driveway around, and here you can see the lean-to. It's 10 foot, I believe, in length. What I wanted to make sure is that this is copper roof over here, tin roof, whatever, and your standard shingle roof here. But I wanted to make sure that I didn't obstruct my view out of here. So I see the cow pasture behind me and everything, even though this slants down. And there it is in the wintertime. There's the finished outside with some landscaping. And it's got gutters and lights outside. Obviously, it looks just like similar. I had to add, it was funny, I've had some UPS people come up to deliver something, and I say, well, I'm not sure which house to deliver it to.
Come on over to the big house.
I could assume that you spend a whole lot of time in there, so they could probably catch you.
That's right.
I do spend a lot of time
Yeah.
there. And this is where I put this up. This is, I think, actually I had my daughter take the picture today because I wanted to show the backside of it. I put this up because this is going to be where I stack wood horizontally back here. This is where I've got the dust collection piped through. So right now I've got a lot of wood inside because I just don't have the horizontal frame members to store the wood out there just yet. But I ran concrete all the way up through here, so I could bring my trailer or whatever in here. I recently got my daughter to build a project. She wanted to build a bookshelf for her friend, and we decided to do ammonia fusion. So this was our first experiment in ammonia fusion. Worked great, and it looks better. I'm sure you've probably done that before on some of your projects. I think with the arts and crafts type style. So that's what we did in the arts and crafts piece there. That's one of the first pieces that I actually have built in the shop. And then there's the final. That's my pipe shop over here. And then there's a working area. Just built a table recently. I was going to put the finish on, but didn't have time to bring it tonight. So maybe I'll bring the cedar table next time. That's what it looks like now. It's very good.
A shop tour.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shop tour. Happy to give a shop tour. So I still have this inside dust collector. I guess let's see. There you can see my dust collector outside. And so my plan is, since it's got another outlet on the dust collector, to run one up underneath to my table saw instead of having this come across. So maybe when you guys come out, you can give me some suggestions because I haven't finished this part yet.
You can run it all under the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, things along the wall make sense from overhead, but everything out in the middle, well, I put it under the floor. And
What about Where are you gonna have enough?
Might depend on where the existing ducting.
Well, sure.
I've got these shut-off valves, but you wouldn't have any shut-off valves.
You still want to come up. So you come up right there and put them above the floor.
You shut up, go right up like the next to the table. So,
I've got a friend that did that in concrete.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah. I'm thinking ahead of time.
You can see, I have a line of work here, my router, cable saw, and planer. Didn't have room to put the jointer in line. We've got the jointers back here and the blades over here. And my work area is back over here, and we got another table over here. Another thing I'd like to do, which you see there's no room for it, but have another dust collection system above the, this just doesn't take off all the dust. Maybe you guys have a better way to get the dust off the table saw. But if I had something suspended here, maybe I'd have a better luck in getting the dust.
It's hard to do. I've got one similar to what you got. It's just going so hard forward. It's just hard to collect.
Anyway, I'm loving the fact that I've got a beautiful shop to work in.
It's great.
Sure.
I assume you did hand plane all those timbers before you put them on, right?
Plain ordinances, yeah.
Only if you'd have sharpened your hand playing it.
Like a Japanese.
Oh, yeah. It's like we hand plane them and then we go back with the ads, make them look.
Yeah, change and stuff, right? Actions and change.
Oh, yeah, the stress, yeah, people love that.
cool. His next 3 years is to go on the trapeze.
Did you stain or seal the open timbers?
Yes, I did. I went around with, what's that orange stuff that y'all recommended that I.
It's called Heritage Natural Finish is what it is, and it's a really nice product. I think he said that was about $68 a gallon. The Heritage Natural Finish about $100 a gallon. Something like that. But a little goes a long way.
I still have some left. I think I bought a 5-gallon container, used it on all of that, and I've used it on some other projects since then too.
Brush it on or spray it on? Or
No, I brushed it on or wiped it on.
It's very nice, it's all natural product. Don't really have to wear gloves with it. It's got orange oil, pine rosin, linseed oil, beeswax, and there's always a fifth ingredient that I can't remember. But it's all natural.
It smells good,
It
actually.
does smell like very citrus.
Well done. Yeah, thank you very much. We'll see you next month with your auction item.
bring your money.
You're welcome.